internment camps during World War II against Japanese Americans. But there's not a military precedent for sorting through who on the Upper East Side is illegal and who's not. And you're asking a 19-year-old, right, holding a weapon, who signed up to serve his or her country, to thrust themselves into maybe the most fraught political topic that we've got in this country. People want a solution, but they don't necessarily want that one.
You twice now insinuated that Trump's going to send the military to round up American citizens, which is totally false.
We've almost become a full-on Scott Jennings fan channel over here at Town Hall because he's just so good. It's one thing for him to be sometimes the only voice of reason over on CNN, that cesspool of liberal bias and absolute Trump-hating, vile fury every single show, every single minute of the day. It's one thing for him to be the only voice in the room, but it's another thing for him to be so damn good. And yesterday was a banner day for all things Scott Jennings over on the cable news network. So let's take a look. First, we set the table. Here's how CNN presents the topic to their viewers.
President-elect Donald Trump confirming that he is going to use the U.S. military to carry out his mass deportation policy. Trump saying on social media early this morning that reports he'll declare a national emergency are true.
Wow, that's outrageous that Trump's going to do that. When was the last time a president declared a national emergency over the border crisis? I mean, you've got to go all the way back to a little over 4 years ago when Donald Trump did it last time he was president. And utilizing military resources to enforce the border and deport people who shouldn't be here? I mean, that's terrible. I mean, who was the last one who did that? That was also Donald Trump the last time he was president. They're acting like their hair's on fire. It's unprecedented. This is outrageous. No, this is he said he was going to do this when he was running. What do you think people voted for? But you can't do that to American citizens. Turn the military on American citizens. That's against our law. That's against posse comitatus, by the way. It's true. That's what it's called. Look it up. Using the military against American citizens. It violates that doctrine. And you'd be absolutely right. These aren't citizens. They're not even legal residents. That's the whole point. They're in the country illegally. All right, I'm sorry. CNN gets me worked up. Imagine if I had to wear a tie and sit at the table like this guy, Scott Jennings. Okay, Scott, I'm going to let you take it from here.
And think about this. The challenge of sorting through them is mammoth. We had a hard time doing it in Iraq. Okay, our troops have had a hard time doing it in Afghanistan. Trying to ask them to sort through who's who and implement a policy like this, here in the United States is like nothing we've ever seen. Actually, I mean, hold on, maybe the only precedent we have is internment camps during World War II against Japanese Americans, but there's not a military precedent for sorting through who on the Upper East Side is illegal and who's not. And you're asking a 19-year-old, right, holding a weapon, who signed up to serve his or her country, to thrust themselves into maybe the most fraught political topic that we've got in this country. People want a solution, but they don't necessarily want that one.
You twice now insinuated that Trump's going to send the military to round up American citizens, which is totally false. There are 1.3 to 1.6 million illegal immigrants in this country today who have already received deportation orders from a court. You can start there. There's another population, as Mark said, that have either committed violent crimes in the United States or committed violent crimes where they came from. You can also do that. That has nothing to do with the people in your neighborhood, has nothing to do with the person in your office, and has nothing to do with whatever the hell you're talking about. It has to do with getting people out of the country who do not belong.
How are you going to deploy the military? Give me how exactly you would deploy an active duty military unit to respond to this crisis.
I would use the military in conjunction with local officials,
what does that look
local
like?
Law enforcement, county sheriffs, people who know their communities, because I assume a lot of the local sheriffs and jailers are going to be the people who end up housing some of these folks before they are deported. But there has to be some
purpose. What's the mission for that young private? What is he actually going to be tasked to do? Guard a gate? Or is he going to be investigating?
I don't know. I wasn't elected.
But you're sitting here on CNN saying we should do it. I think you should think out a little bit more about what they actually should be required to do.
Do not belong.
It sounds real good.
One at a time. Scott, quickly.
There are millions of people who came into the country illegally, who have already received deportation orders, or who have committed some other crime while they've been here. The fact that you want to leave them in place is mind-boggling.
That is not what I said. That is not what I said.
Let me ask the same question I asked Chuck.
Yeah.
What was the mandate from the election? As much as any issue, immigration was on the ballot. So what do you think the voters were saying on immigration?
I think the voters were saying do something about it. I think broadly across partisan lines, there is almost universal need for people to do something about it. What you do about it is a totally different story. Can I finish? Or are you guys going to jump in? I know this is like the normal thing around.
This is the normal thing around here. This guy flexing his muscles as a military guy, trying to intimidate Scott Jennings. It doesn't go well for him. You'll see the end of this in just a moment. But it's a pet peeve of mine when people are just say, well, how are you going to do that? It can't be done. It can't be done. You know, it's interesting. When somebody steps up as an American citizen and says that we demand that the law be enforced, it's not the government's job now to say, well, we don't know how to enforce the law. No, your job is to do it. And to pretend like the military can't work in cooperation with local and federal law enforcement, that can't be done. How are you going to do this? What's the task? What's the duty? Every single time there's a riot or a national emergency or an earthquake or a flood or wildfires that displace people from their homes or anything, that we often use the National Guard. Governors do it all of the time. This is nothing new. And if you've got a governor with state law enforcement who are bound and determined to work with the federal government and ICE enforcement and immigration enforcement, law enforcement, and you want to have additional boots on the ground to get it done, that's how you utilize military assets. This guy's completely disingenuous for claiming like, how are you going to do it? You need to tell it out. No, that's not my job to tell you how to do it. It's your job to figure it out because your job is to enforce the law. And again, I want to reiterate this whole idea of mass deportations, mass deportation. There's another phrase for mass deportations: enforcing existing immigration law. The law already states that if you're here illegally and there is a court-ordered deportation order, you must be deported. There are over 1 million in this country right now who have gotten the order for deportation, and they're hiding. They're running. They know it won't be enforced. That doesn't mean you let them hide. That doesn't mean you ignore the law. It means it's your job to enforce the law. Figure it out. But now this guy flexes. This is one of my biggest pet peeves for retired military people who go on cable news and they do this move right here.
In small numbers. This is a very different thing.
Many state.
You can't deploy them to.
You got to make your speech.
Is it a debate with you, or am I answering questions with the host? Because every time I come on, you want to sidetrack and take me into your talking points.
But by all means,
no.
Have at it, my friend. You're the expert. Have at it.
No, I'm no expert. I'm just a concerned
you act like one. Have we or have we not?
Have you served in uniform?
I have served as a United States citizen.
There we go. Did you see that? Did you see that? This is, you always know that somebody has lost the debate when they pull that card. Well, have you worn the uniform? Have you served in the military? And suddenly, if you haven't served in the military, you're not allowed to have an opinion about this? That you're not allowed to actually jump on board? You know, Tom Homan, our new border czar, he's worn the uniform of law enforcement as a border patrol agent, as well as New York City and I think state law enforcement. Does he not have a right to have an opinion? I mean, this is literally his expertise. And he says, yeah, you bet your ass we're going to do this. You know, it's always a tell for me when a retired military goes on the air and a civilian is discussing policy with them and they try to play that trump card. Well, you've never served in the military. So by that token, that means the president, unless they've served in the military, doesn't have the right to have an opinion about these things. Or for that matter, be the commander in chief and give the order. See, here's how it works. Sir, Mr. Rykoff, since you've served in the military, you've worn the uniform, and now you're flexing that muscle as if it's some get out of jail free card or some sort of trump card that silences anyone who disagrees with you. Here's my understanding of how things work. You served in the military. I think you know this. There's a chain of command. And at the very tippy top of that chain of command, can't get any higher, is the commander in chief. That would be the president of the United States. This is what he wants done, and he is ordering you to do it. That's it. That's the end of discussion. Are you telling me that the commander in chief is only allowed to give that order if he served in the military and worn the uniform himself? Oh, good. Glad you didn't try to go there. Thanks, pal. So here's what you do. You salute smartly and you charge up the hill, and you figure out how to get it done. The commander in chief has given the order. Now it's incumbent on you to do it. And if we disagree with you, we don't have to have a military record to be able to step up and have the honor of disagreeing with you. I hate it when someone does this, but it's a perfect tell of someone who's out of their depth and is losing the argument.
And if read the
but I think in this case, I might have a bit of experience that you don't. I'm no expert.
Have you been to the border?
I have not been to the border.
Oh, so
I also haven't been deployed to the border.
Go ahead. by all means.
Regular military, is there something?
Yeah, and let's just laugh at the person instead of actually engaging. All right, so that's just the beginning of Scott Jennings. I'm sorry, this is supposed to be about Scott Jennings, but I get so worked up in these segments that I sort of want to tag team with Scott. But let's go, because he wasn't done yet. He appeared on so many different shows yesterday, and he was absolutely golden in every single one. More Jennings? You betcha more Jennings. Go Jennings.
Promise you with every fiber of my being, because I'll probably be one of those people, that if anybody comes for these people and tries to drag them out by force, there will be protests of people like me, American citizens, who are going to stand there and do everything possible to prevent these women and children, which is all who these people are.
How about the criminals? How about the terrorists? How about the
But how do you sort
Stop.
through
How do you know who
How
it
do you
is?
sort through?
That's the problem.
I live-
don't know who
Stop.
it is.
Stop. I'm sorry. I live next to these people. I can tell you they are women and they are children. Are there terrorists among them? I don't know. But I can tell you that
And
there are.
neither does the government.
But I
which
can
is why
tell
we
you,
have to
but
figure
let
this
me tell,
out.
okay, but what I'm telling you right now, practically speaking, is that there will be people, American citizens, who will prevent these little kids from being dragged out of these shelters. There are. And what's going to happen to these people? What is going to happen to the military when the military opens fire on us?
But no one's.
Can I just say, hang on one sec, Chuck. I just
We're
wanna ask
way
you,
down a
because
rabbit hole here.
Yeah, not only are we down a rabbit hole, but it's the most manipulative, emotional blackmail that you'll see. And let me just say something. It's like, it's really heart-wrenching, this person. What is it? Lift every voice, hear every voice. She's supposed to be an advocate for women and children who are just migrants here looking for a better life, even though they've broken our laws and continue our break of laws by stopping here. Someone should let her know that under the Biden administration and with Kamala Harris's assistance, her deft hand as our borders are, for the last 3.5 years, almost 4 years now, nearly 350,000 children who have come to this country by crossing our border after being exploited by God knows what south of the border with the coyotes and human strugglers and drug traffickers that let them into this country with the help of the Biden administration. Nearly 350,000 children have been lost by the Biden administration. They have no idea where they are. They're here illegally. They're supposedly asking for asylum. They're supposed to be kept track of, and they are lost. They could be sex trafficked right now. They could be part of prostitution rings right now in this country. God knows what has happened to these 350,000 children. Where is she grandstanding about that for the last 3.5 years? This is the only thing that bothers her? Sorry, you have no moral credibility with me. Don't try to stand on your high horse and play the moral high hand against me. If you haven't been sitting here screaming from the top of your lungs about the plight of those 350,000 children that your political pals lost in this country, who are being exploited as we speak, you've got no right to grandstand and say, oh, but the children and the women who will be deported. Let's start with the over 1 million people who have already got the deportation orders. They broke our laws. A judge has said they should be deported, so deport them. It's that simple.
Amazing. I did not expect Hitler to get so many meeting requests. First from Joe Biden, now from Mika and Joe. It's amazing that literal Hitler is getting all these meeting requests. And what it tells me, Professor, is that all the rhetoric that came from the left, from the Democrats, from the White House, from Kamala Harris and everyone else before the election, all of the rhetoric, the fascism, the Hitler, the Nazi rally at him, it was all a bunch of BS. They didn't mean any of it. And if I were in the Democrat sort of rabble's shoes, I would be looking at all my leaders and going, did you just BS me for an entire 6 weeks before the election?
Yes, and the answer is they did just BS them, as we exploded yesterday on the Joe and Mika issue. All right, now earlier in the evening, Scott Jennings, again, talking about deportation and immigration and border, was on with Jake Tapper, our favorite Jake Tapper. I do love that so many of these segments on CNN are, this just in, Donald Trump intends to do exactly what he said he would do for the last year while campaigning for president. They're outraged. They're outraged that he actually intends to enforce our immigration policies that includes the deportation of people who aren't supposed to be here. Watch this exchange, though.
Start with you. Farm industry officials and economists tell CNN that if Trump indeed goes forward with this mass deportation plan and rounds up the millions of undocumented immigrants who are working in our agricultural sector, they say high grocery prices are only going to get higher. Obviously getting rid of people who have committed crimes beyond coming into the country illegally is one thing, but deporting people who are paying taxes, keeping the food and agriculture industries running, doing jobs that native-born Americans don't want to do or not willing to do, won't this actually hurt the Americans who are already so frustrated about high prices in grocery stores.
All right. Thank you to Newsbusters for the clip. I'm going to come back on that clip and give you my own commentary on Jake Tapper, the last really good, true, honest journalist in this town. But first, we'll let you have Jennings' response to this. But boy, that question from Tapper is just gold. I'll have my crack in a second. Let's let Jennings have it first.
He's having a meltdown.
I mean, everybody seems to be on the same sheet of music today that this is going to mess up the agriculture industry and drive the grocery prices high. I've seen numerous pieces on it. I've seen everybody seems to be out there talking about it. And so it strikes me, Jake, that Democrats, this is their new line of attack, that Donald Trump's got a plan to raise your grocery prices simply by following through on his campaign promises. And I just don't think it's true.
I mean, I've been covering this issue for since the first Bush administration in 2001. I mean, this is always one of the issues with it, is that there are a lot of undocumented immigrants who work for the agricultural sector. And there's always concerns about, are those people actually going to be deported? And if so, what happens to prices for, regular folk just trying to make an honest living and buy some eggs? Maria, Democrat.
He is so disingenuous. I got to tell you, this guy bugs the hell out of me. And this right here, that guy right there, that's the guy. Scott Jennings is properly pointing out that clearly the talking points were issued yesterday because across the board you had people, they've moved from, oh, you can't do this to women and children and abuelas and abuelitas, to, they have every right to be here because they're claiming asylum and you can't send them back to their country because they'll be killed because they're gay or what have you. They've moved from that to, it's going to cost too much to deport. I love that one. Oh, the cost of rounding everyone up and deporting them is outrageous. Meanwhile, we're literally paying to fly them into this country and fly them across and around this country. And we're putting them up in shelters and we're giving them food and we're giving them medical care and we're giving them educations and we're giving them cell phones and we're giving them all these things. But we're now worried about the cost of actually deporting people and sending them back to the country they came from before they broke our laws. And now the latest talking point is it's going to make vegetables cost too much money. And it was across the board yesterday. And so Jennings calls him out on it. And this is what we get from Jake Tapper. We get this. He literally looks like an emoji. He looks like the colon and the backward slash emoji. So good for Scott Jennings calling him out on it. But can we just revisit this question? Because it's really a work of art from Jake Tapper.
Start with you. Farm industry officials and economists tell CNN that if Trump...
Farm industry officials tell CNN. In other words, he's listening to big agriculture, right? I love it when individuals of the left who decry corporations and the greedy 1% and the business owners and industry owners, because they're the problem in this capitalist society, man. But when they want to make a point that they want to keep their cheap exploited labor in this country so they can have cheap kumquats in their fruit cup, Jake Tapper, now we're going to cite big agriculture. Farm industry officials tell CNN. So it's got to be true, right?
Indeed goes forward with this mass deportation plan and rounds up the millions of undocumented immigrants who are working in our agricultural sector.
Rounds up millions of undocumented immigrants that work in our agricultural center. And for those of you who are uninformed, or if you've got some liberal at your Thanksgiving dinner table next week who makes the same argument, or maybe they're on your Facebook page making that argument. Oh, who's gonna pick your fruit? Who's gonna pick your strawberries if you deport everyone? I just want you to know, because you're probably sitting there, oh my gosh, we hadn't thought of that. Oh my gosh, what are we doing? How did we ever have affordable produce in this country before the 10 million all came here in the last 3.5 years? And the answer is sort of baked into the question, isn't it? There's two answers to this, by the way. One of the biggest problems in our country right now with regard to farming and agriculture is that for the first time in like centuries, literally since the dawn of the United States of America, we are right now a net importer of food, of meat, of poultry, of fruits and vegetables. We're bringing a bunch of those fruits and vegetables in from foreign countries, which is a serious problem. Okay, so actually we need to do better at growing our own food so that we're not dependent on other nations, number one. Number two, the fact is we have a guest worker program in this country. There is a legal guest worker program. It's been around for decades. Seasonal employees during harvest time can come from other countries. They can get a temporary visa so they can live in the country legally, do that farm work, and then go home. In fact, back in the 80s, many of the illegal immigrants that were in this country at that time came here on the guest worker program and then stayed. It was a problem that we needed to deal with. And apparently the way we've solved that problem is to just bypass the guest worker program entirely. Just come here illegally, it doesn't matter, and we'll pay you under the table. By the way, Jake, millions of undocumented immigrants working in farm industry jobs right now. Now, Jake, I'm not as smart as you, and I'm not a professional teleprompter reader like you are. But could I just ask you a question, or maybe you can ask yourself a question before you maintain this political position that you just posited on your own very smart show? If there are 1 million people working in the farm industry and they are undocumented, which means, of course, they don't have legal documents here in the United States of America that would allow them to work, then here's the question. Are you ready for it? How are they working? If they are undocumented, how, in fact, are they working? So I don't know about you, Jake, but when I got my job, I had to fill out a form called the I-9. And with the I-9 form, I had to produce either a passport or a social security number or a driver's license that showed that I was legally eligible to work here. So if all of those undocumented workers are working in this country without documentation, aren't they breaking the law? Don't they continue to break the law? Either by utilizing identity theft and fake documents so they could fill out their I-9 form fraudulently, or they're working in cahoots with the farm industry professionals that you just cited as the experts for the premise of your question. And those farm industry experts are actually breaking our laws as well. They're all in on it together so they can exploit those individuals. Jake, I know that you only care about having cheap grapes and inexpensive apples so you can make that fabulous fruit salad and that ambrosia salad that your wife loves so much when you get into the kitchen and put on your cute apron. But you know what, Jake? Our cares, our needs, our worries, our hearts here over on Town Hall Media on this show, Larry, our concerns go well beyond you being able to afford fruit when you go to Whole Foods or Wegmans. We actually care about that person who's picking the fruit. You're fine with them being exploited as long as you don't have to pay an extra $1.50 for a basket of strawberries. But over here, we don't like the fact that those workers are being exploited. Exploited by those big farm industry experts that you just got your question from and parroted on your show on CNN. Actually, we don't think that people should be treated like borderline slaves. I understand that you're interested in protecting the plantation owner. It's okay. You can have your position. It's a free country. But maybe you should ask another step 2, step 3, step 4 question before you actually grandstand in your sanctimonious way with your little smirk and furrowed brow. If there are truly millions of undocumented workers who are picking your fruit, Jake, it means they continue to break the law. The people employing them continue to break the law, and they're being exploited. And you're clearly okay with it because you need those cheap bananas for God knows what.
They say high grocery prices are only going to get higher. Obviously getting rid of people who have.
Hold on, Jake. What do you mean high grocery prices? I've been watching CNN all year long, and I've been told that inflation is going down, that Bidenomics works, that people who believe they've got expensive produce at the store are really just making it up. And they're pretending that they're lying or they're just imagining high grocery prices. But now that the election's over and you don't have to protect Biden and Kamala Harris anymore, now you're conceding that we have high grocery prices, but your big worry is that they're going to get even higher. I just want to be clear on where CNN stands here. And what's this next point you're going to make?
Obviously getting rid of people who have committed crimes beyond coming into the country illegally is one thing.
Really? Is that obvious? Jake Tapper says, obviously, getting rid of people who are in this country who have committed crimes is one thing. Well, it wasn't that obvious for the last 8 or 9 months during the presidential election. In fact, when people maintained and said that those who are in this country illegally and continue to break the law should certainly be at the top of the list to be deported, those people were called racist and xenophobic, and building walls doesn't help anyone. And no, we're a part of a world community. And how dare you? You're upsetting people. You can't say things like that. What about the Statue of Liberty? But now Jake Tapper says, obviously, people are in this country illegally who have broken the law. That's one thing. Well, Jake, I take you back to the first part of my analysis here. If they're working in this country, they are breaking the law. And so by your own question here, your own proposition, these people who are picking your beats here, that look great looking beats, they should be deported, right? Listen to the obviously part again.
Crimes beyond.
Oh, sorry. Hold on.
Obviously, getting rid of people who have committed crimes beyond coming into the country illegally is one thing.
The undocumented workers who were working, by definition, are committing crimes, either with identity theft or working under the table by being ineligible to work here. So, Jake, if it's that obvious, then your entire question makes no sense.
But deporting people who are paying taxes, keeping the food and agriculture industries running.
Paying taxes? I don't know about you, Jake, but when I pay taxes, I have to submit my social security number. That's how they track it. So if they're paying taxes and they're in this country illegally and they don't have a green card and they're getting paid under the table, how exactly are they paying taxes? Oh, sales taxes when they go to buy things. That's not quite the same thing, is it? You know, when people say, I work here, I live here, I'm a citizen, I pay my taxes, they mean their income taxes, Jake. I think you're being disingenuous, Jake.
Doing jobs that native-born Americans don't want to do or not willing to do.
Doing jobs that native-born Americans don't want to do or will not do. Well, again, I refer you back to the guest worker program that has been set up specifically for that case. But I'll concede the point. There probably are native-born Americans who don't want to do these jobs or won't do these jobs at the exploitive, low slave wages that your friends in the farm industry are paying these people who are in this country illegally. But you know, it'd be amazing to see whether we could actually find people who would do these jobs if they got a competitive wage. Oh, but that would make the kumquats in Jake Tapper's fruit salad too expensive, so we can't have that. You know what? Let's see. I'd love to see if that's the case. Because I can tell you this. There's a huge economic benefit in this country when people who were living off of the public trust and out of our tax dollars and out of an already taxed social service system that was not budgeted or designed to take on millions of people in this country who aren't even citizens. As soon as you get the economic benefit of not having to carry all of those people and deliver education and deliver medical care and deliver shelter and deliver all those things that we're currently delivering to people who are not tax-paying citizens of this country, the economic benefit of that actually will go a long way to offsetting already built-in inflation. And thus, even though you're paying higher wages, perhaps, and benefits to people who are naturally born as they pick our fruit, ultimately, actually, the economic benefits could very well outweigh it. But you know what? We never really tried because Jake Tapper won't have it. He needs to make sure his kiwis are cheap for his fruit salad. Have I mentioned he really loves his fruit salad?
Won't this actually hurt the Americans who are already so frustrated about high prices in grocery stores?
There you go. Americans are really upset about high prices in grocery stores now, finally, suddenly, not during the election, but now they're really upset, and we don't want to make it worse. Where were you, Jake? Where were you, Jake, for the last 3.5 years when every single economic government spending decision that this administration made things much, much, much worse? You were nowhere. And now the only time you've decided to draw the line and call into question a government policy that will make grocery store prices more expensive is, in fact, the enforcement of our immigration laws. That's the one policy you decide to speak out against. What a disingenuous, sanctimonious kid. Scott Jennings is pure gold at CNN. If they were smart, they'd give him a show, but they're not smart. They'll just expand Jake Tapper's role. And Scott Jennings has continued to do a great job. And well, the next day I'll be able to do this. Love you, Jake. Never change. For those of us holding our breath for the past several months, we can finally take a big old exhale. What a relief. The election's over. Work can finally be done on the major issues this country is facing. And one of the most significant is our national debt. The fact is our nation is broke, and that debt is a house of cards, and it's not going to be quickly or easily dismantled. So for your own personal finances, the strategy remains the same. Diversify your savings, guys. Many things are out of our control, even out of Trump's control, at least in the outset. It's important to have a safe haven for your savings. So why don't you talk to the people at Birch Gold Group? Birch Gold Group, they'll help you convert an IRA or 401k into an IRA in physical gold. And the best news is this does not cost you a penny out of pocket. Text my name, Larry, to 989898. Get a free info kit on gold. Right now, through Black Friday, you're going to receive a free 1 ounce. I don't know. I assume it's about this big. I think it's actually more about this big. You're going to get a free 1 ounce Silver Eagle. The visual aid really sells it, doesn't it? A free 1 ounce gold Silver Eagle for every $5,000 purchase with Birch Gold. Text Larry to 989898.